So we have 5 really distinguished panelists today for the last event, which I think should be one of the most fun parts of the day. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go down the line and let them each introduce themselves in terms of their context with respect to hemp. But we have Andrew Bish, Cameron McIntosh, Sarah Mitchell, Mike Roth, and Erica Stark. Many of you know some of these folks. Most of you might not know all of these folks, so that's kind of nice. So my opening question will be pretty simple, and I'm just going to say take a minute or two, and we'll just go right down the line, and introduce yourself, your organization, and how you fit into the hemp world. So I'll let you start.
Okay. So my name is Cameron McIntosh. I'm the owner of Americhanvre Hemp. We're based in Allentown in Lehigh Valley. We are more or less an installation, service, and raw material supplier for a particular method of installing hempcrete, which is basically hemp hurd and lime biocomposite insulation and walling material. Non-structural, as the name would mislead you to believe. It is nothing like concrete. And we use a spray system from Europe that we've licensed called the AgriSeeds spray application system, which is a proprietary binding agent and an equipment package that allows you basically to spray the material on the wall, sort of like shotcrete or gunite, as opposed to doing it the more traditional hand cast way. So also a member of the PA Hemp Industry Council, along with Erica here, and the National Hemp Association. I did put some time in with the U.S. Hemp Building Association as well, where we wrote the residential building code for this specific material. So that is Appendix BL in the IRC. It's active, it's a living document, we're still working on it right now. And I'll just finish by saying also that I'm happy to say recently in June we just wrapped up a 1.5 year long U.S. Army Direct to Phase 2 SBIR award that we got, and that allowed us about, I would say, maybe 20 or 30 years worth of R&D funding at one time, which is really great. We did a lot of research with Penn State on the thermal performance of our material in the field. And then we're also working on our equipment package, domesticating our binder, and a few other odds and ends via that funding. So yeah, it's good for me.
Hi, my name is Erica Stark. I'm the chair of the Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council. I've been doing this for, I think, like 10 years now. I'm not sure. Started very much at the grassroots advocacy level. My husband and I went to Senator Schwenk back in 2014 and asked her to introduce the bill that eventually legalized hemp here in Pennsylvania. We were the first organization to get our seeds in the ground the first year that it was legal. So been really strong on the advocacy front. Had the pleasure of working closely with the Department of Ag in developing regulations, and they've been absolutely phenomenal. Pennsylvania is very lucky to have a very supportive Department of Ag. 2 years ago, we shifted gears and we became an official 501c3. So we're not really doing advocacy work much anymore because, well, we've shifted to working on trying to build investment into hemp in Pennsylvania. We got a grant, I guess it was 2 years ago, where we created a bunch of tools for entrepreneurs to help them and to educate, to encourage investment in Pennsylvania. And now we're working on our second grant, which is working on a viable plan for building supply chains in Pennsylvania. So I have had the pleasure of working with a lot of you. Interested in if anybody has any ideas or things that they'd like to share, please reach out. We want to be as inclusive as possible and make sure that we make Pennsylvania the leader in hemp that it was and can be again.
You're here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Roth. I'm the Director of Innovation with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. I've had the great pleasure of working with most of the folks on the panel here today. When I started in 2019 with the department as a lowly fellow, but I've been fortunate to look to them for guidance in looking at how we can support the hemp industry in the best ways we can. So I was fortunate enough to, in my early career with the department, see the Pennsylvania Hemp House that Cameron and team worked on, and see a lot of other great projects that were groundbreaking at the time that weren't happening in other places in the country. So I'm eager to continue to support through the Ag Innovation Fund, which we just launched last year, as well as other programs we have at the Department of Agriculture to continue to support this industry. So excited to talk with you all and learn more.
I'm Sarah Mitchell and really appreciate the chance to be here today and talk with you. So thank you very much for inviting me. I work for King's AgriSeeds, and King's AgriSeeds is a family-owned seed company, and many people are surprised to learn that we represent, we are an agronomic seed supplier in 14 states. So it's a pretty good sized company, and I'm fortunate to be heading up the hemp product line. I thank my corn and soybean, wheat, and cover crop salespeople for floating this little boat for the company. But the leadership at King's AgriSeeds is very interested in new products to keep our farmers growing good crops. Another key tenet about King's AgriSeeds is soil health. We've been cover crop fans for more years than people have been talking about it. So complex cover crop mixtures is something that we specialize in. We have proprietary corn varieties, we have award-winning forages, and we do have a pretty complete mix of agronomic seeds, of which hemp is just a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. So my job is unique compared to the other people on our team in that I work with the entire supply chain. And if you've ever been to one of our field days, you know that the entire supply chain is attending. That our plant breeders are coming in to see what their crops look like, including some of the varieties that they are asking us to grow for screening purposes before introduction, all the way to farmers to see what this crop is all about, processors to see what will work through their own systems, and then manufacturers who can actually look at the varieties and say, this one will work, no, no, no. Boy, plant breeder, if you would tweak this just a little bit, it would be perfect for my application. So it's a great time for people to actually be looking at the raw material and saying, this is what I need. So that's really a wonderful, wonderful job for me, like the rest of you in this industry, living on the edge. I think I have grown 48 different varieties at this point, which is quite a few, considering that this is a private company. We don't have electron microscopes or any of those staircase type mini desktop features that you have over there at Jefferson University. So we do applied research that makes our farmers grow better crops with better soil conditions, all with the interest of keeping our farmers in business. And hemp is on our horizon. I keep saying it. They say, Sarah, come and tell me about it when there's a market, okay? And I say, stay tuned. So that's that.
King's needs to pay you more for your advertisements.
Yes, they do.
I like Sarah a lot. This is a wonderful group up here, and I appreciate. I'm from Nebraska, so I'm the only non-Pennsylvanian person here. It's beautiful out here, by the way. So, myself, Andrew Bish. I'm from Gilner, Nebraska, and my day job is I design and fabricate equipment, mostly harvesting equipment. So, our business has been in business since 1976. I'm a third-generation operator. And we do a lot of research. We work with specialty crops. We design unique harvesting solutions for United States farmers. That's what we do. I got involved because of that work in hemp in 2015, and one of my capacities is serving as the president of the Hemp Feed Coalition. I was raised by farmers. I come from a long line of farmers, and we need rotational crop opportunities. And if we're going to make hemp a rotational crop opportunity, my opinion is we need to look at some of those lowest hanging fruit And for me, that's animal feed. That's what most of the food grown in America is used for today. So looking at that, what we do at the Hemp Feed Coalition is we work with the research institutions across the United States, private research as well, and ultimately we gather that research and look to put applications into the FDA for approval for hemp as an animal feed. So we have to approve every single type of animal and then different varieties of hemp. So you can't just approve hemp for animal feed, and you can't approve hemp for chickens, for instance. What we have achieved so far is approval of hemp seed meal mechanically extracted for egg-laying chickens. So that's the first animal we got down. And the first animal costs about $850,000 in 5.5 years of our lives. And I'm excited to do it. We found a path. We can shortcut that now. What we're missing is we got to have funding to do it. I think it's the easiest commodity to put into production. It's got it's probably the quickest to the stream of commerce if we have proper funding to be able to approve more animals. So we're really excited about that. Our next application is going to be for beef cattle and lamb. That's going to open up a big marketplace. And when we think about marketplace, just to give you some perspective, the egg-laying chicken market, if we were to able to impact just 5% of egg-laying chickens, and they were to eat 20% of their diet were hemp seed meal, that would need approximately 196,000 acres of hemp grown for grain. And that's just egg-laying chickens. So when we start to get into the beef cattle, and again, 5% market impact, we're looking at a couple million acres. That's how this industry can start to scale, and these opportunities for farmers can become available. So that's why I do it, because I care about farmers, I care about rotational crop opportunities. Hemp Feed Coalition pays very poorly. I think I'm paying to be here today for this event because we spend all our money on these animals, and I'm glad to do it. But that's me, that's my background, and I'm grateful to be on this panel.
Thank you very much, everyone. It is a pretty amazing panel we have today. So I'm going to use moderator prerogative and ask the very first question, but then I'll expect you guys to jump in, so think about what you want to ask this esteemed group. I think I'll start with Eric on this one. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for Pennsylvania's hemp industry in the next few years?
Scalability and getting decortication will go far. We need to get Cam what he needs, so he's not bringing it in containers across the ocean. We need to get Paul what he needs. You know, there's a whole bunch of businesses here that are ready for Pennsylvania produced material. We have the farmers that are ready to do it. We need to get Sarah to redeem herself with her company, because when the large amount of seed goes out the door. I think that, the animal feed is a big deal, but I think that what goes along with that is we have to find more markets for the actual cold pressed oil so that the animal feed isn't carrying the whole load of making grain crops profitable. So yeah, we need to attract investment. We also have some policy changes that are going to happen on the federal level that are going to make things a lot better, at least on the industrial side of things, maybe not so much on the cannabinoid side, but for fiber and grain, I think we can look forward to not having background checks, not having to have mandatory chemical testing if you're growing exclusively for fiber and grain. In other words, we're going to get bifurcation by legal definition, an actual definition of industrial hemp, which will be defined as hemp that is grown exclusively for fiber, for grain, or for microgreens. And as long as you're willing to stipulate that you're not going to be doing any cannabinoid extraction at all, there'll be a whole series of relaxed regulations that you'll be able to take advantage of if your state is willing. And I'm pretty positive Pennsylvania is going to be willing, because they've been instrumental in helping us get this language into the draft versions of the Farm Bill. We're also seeing these new definitions in the appropriations language as well. So I think that will be really good in terms of giving farmers confidence. We're hoping it also will have a big impact on investors, where the separation between industrial hemp and the cannabinoid industry that still has a lot of legal and regulatory gray areas the separation of that hopefully will open up some wallets and encourage some investment in the primary infrastructure that we desperately need here in Pennsylvania and across the country, frankly.
Good answers. Anybody on the panel want to add to what Erica said?
Well, I think you're right. I think grain is the low-hanging fruit. Everybody eats. We don't have to explain what protein is, vegetable protein. And I think that we know how to use soybean meal. We're big on flax. And so I do think that, and grain hemp can be produced by existing grain farmers. There are nuances, however. It isn't like falling off a log. There are nuances to growing hemp for grain, but I think grain is the entry level that can soften the stigma that I was asking about before, and it's a valuable protein, particularly as we reduce the amount of animal protein that we consume in this country, for one reason or another, either cost or for health reasons.
And I think Erica touched on something that's pretty important, which is the infrastructure constraint. You look at the soybean growth in the United States starting back in the 30s and really not ramping up until you get into the 50s and 60s, and the equipment evolution that occurred as a result of that crop. I don't think we're going to be that far off. I'm not excited about the regulations. Have they stifled the industry? 100%. But if they hadn't, we still have an infrastructure problem. So until we figure out those points, until we have grain in elevators or decorticators or whatever processors within range of farmers, we're gonna still have a problem in the industry, and that's gonna take a while to solve. So I think we definitely need to, I'm very enthusiastic about the plant, but we definitely need to temper that enthusiasm for the reality that we're facing.
Mike, you got anything to add?
Yeah, if I can figure this out. Well, I'll steal the words of our friend over there from Lancaster Farming and say, I think the opportunity is to make it big, boring, and beautiful. Eric, stealing your words over there. But just to say, in alignment with where the state's going as far as the future and opportunity, the governor has 5 pillars of economic development. So it's agriculture, manufacturing, life sciences, energy, and robotics and AI. And what I always like to argue is that agriculture is the one that I think can connect to the other 4 directly. They can't all connect to each other, but ag can. So I think the opportunity is to have hemp be a part of those big and boring conversations that aren't the sexy things on the news or whatever. But as we looked at like something like the cut with hemp in it, again, like you said, Ron, earlier as well. I mean, that's not going to turn heads, in a newspaper ad or something, but that is the economic engine that keeps us moving forward. So I think if we can integrate hemp and other agricultural practices into our pillars that we're working on right now, that's where we'll see success.
I'll just finish by saying that we, trying not to make a pointed political statement, there's a darkness that you could argue has settled across the land here. In Pennsylvania, I feel that we are insulated from that in a way because we have a very supportive Department of Agriculture that works very closely with an incredibly progressive and motivated governor. Under the Shapiro administration, I feel like we have an opportunity here in Pennsylvania to sort of fast track the innovation that would be required, create the programs and the investment, catalyze the investment that is needed for the processing infrastructure here in the state of Pennsylvania. And again, I'm proud to say that we're from Pennsylvania because I do feel like we're insulated from that to an extent. Going back to the darkness, National Hemp Association had a $20 million USDA grant that got taken away by the current administration. $20 million to grow fiber industrial hemp in the Chesapeake Bay watershed part of Lancaster County. Tell me that alone wouldn't have catalyzed the investment for someone to say, you know what, there's going to be 5,000 acres a year of hemp being grown here in the state. Somebody should probably set up a processor. So we import our herd from France, as Erica mentioned. It's being imported from the largest and oldest farmer-owned cooperative in France. They've been growing fiber industrial hemp for 60 years. They know how to do it. I got to see one of their member farms. Guess what they had? A New Holland round baler and a Harley rake. That was it. That was the only thing on that farm. It didn't look any different from what we have here in PA. Mike will also tell you that here in the state of Pennsylvania, we grow primarily specialty crops, right? We are not Nebraska. We don't have 10,000 acre farms that are devoted purely to corn and soy, corn, soy, corn, soy, corn, soy. We grow specialty crops here. So that, and we have neighbors like the state of New York that is also quite well insulated, I feel like, from the current climate politically. Larry's here. Larry mentioned that the other day. Larry has dropped in on my warehouse a couple of times unannounced once. Once with Sarah, and once yesterday caught me off guard again. But I think that's really cool that Cornell Agritech, he emailed me, I messed it up. But I think that's pretty cool that we have, Cornell Agritech sitting here. He has one of my machines sitting in the bed of his truck right now. So, if we link arms with the states around us and really push for it, again, the missing component is that processing infrastructure. There was a huge investment made. Ashley Pocono made a huge investment in cannabinoid hemp. That's what everyone put their money into in 2018-19. And here we are on the other side of that. And, we've always felt, everyone on this panel, at least most of you in this room probably, have always acknowledge the fact that, the fiber industrial, grain industrial applications dwarf what is essentially a health supplement in CBD, cannabinoid, THC, any of that. You can hack that down to a health supplement where we're talking today about bioplastics and graphene applications and really scientific applications. With a supportive Department of Agriculture, I can't say that enough. We are very fortunate in the state of Pennsylvania. I would argue we have the most supportive and have had the most supportive Department of Agriculture out of all of them. Even though Sarah was probably ready to lose her mind at the beginning. I remember Sarah looking pretty bewildered in 2018-19 trying to get a grip on all of this. But, Mike is not a small part of that. Mike is actually a huge part of that. But Russ also has been incredibly supportive. And this is all from the perspective of supporting farmers and agriculture. So even though, again, on the larger political stage, it's pretty dark, I think we could appeal to the current administration if they could see clearly the difference between fiber and grain and cannabinoid. Yeah. It absolutely speaks to the talking points on the right. Local self-reliance, support for American agriculture. I mean, this is and always has been a bipartisan topic. That's how it got passed in the first place. It was Mitch McConnell who really was instrumental in pushing for, the language in the 2018 Farm Bill, which is flawed, as many of our laws tend to be.
But here in Pennsylvania, our hemp bill passed unanimously in one session, and that never happens.
And that's rare, yeah. So anyway,
as they say, whether you're blue or red, everybody understands green.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear. Your point about political upheaval, I think it's important to understand that as stressful as that is, most advances happen when things get disrupted. Right. If things are status quo, it's hard to make change. When you upset the apple cart, that's when you have an opportunity. If you could be aggressive, to jump in there and get ahead of everybody else, I think that's our opportunity in Pennsylvania. Right. Take advantage of that. And so I hand come up for a question. Absolutely.
I guess this kind of aligns with the conversation we've been having, but I didn't plan that. This is a question, again, back to you, Eric. How far on the back burner is the Farm Bill? Like, are we getting a 2026 Farm Bill? Like, do you
have a crystal ball? Obviously this was supposed to be the 2023 Farm Bill, and here we are, 2025. I don't know the answer to that. When they come back from their recess, I think the, appropriations bill and all that's going to be first up. We're supposed to have it by the end of September. September 30th is the deadline. And that means they're either going to have to pass something or they're going to have to do another CR, which is a continuing resolution. I'm not necessarily a betting person, but I would put my money on the CR. Kicking the can down the road seems to be what this Congress does. But I don't know, I've been wrong before. And I actually have mixed feelings. Like in some ways, like, you know, at least on the, you know, for what we want for industrial hemp, I would love to just see it pass and be done with it. But there's a lot of stuff in there that will hurt other people in this space. And, you know, including the cannabinoid side of things. Everybody can have their own opinions on that, but I don't like to see harm done to anybody. So is it better for them to rush it through because they have reefer madness and want to, you know, ban stuff, or is it better to wait and hopefully get saner voices in the room that can pass something good? I don't know, and I don't really have a say in it. We're going to get what we're going to get, but I'm guessing it's not going to be by the end of September. History just doesn't seem to support that.
Due in part to Rand Paul recently, I don't know how closely you all are following this, but Rand basically threatened to shut down the entire government over preserving these loopholes in the poorly worded language in the 2018 Farm Bill that led to the proliferation of all of these intoxicating cannabinoids that are untested. So I don't want to call him a coward or whatever, but at the same time, I think he was misled by there's literally a battle right now for the soul of the hemp industry, and it is being fought between those who want to preserve these loopholes that have created not CBD, but the THCO and all this stuff that's being sold in the gas stations. To who? Who's buying that? People that can't walk into a dispensary. We in Pennsylvania are surrounded by legal states. If you like cannabis, you have a 30-minute drive from where we're sitting right now to be able to go get it if you're 21. If you're not, where are you buying it? You're buying these weird products that haven't been tested even on lab animals yet. And Rand Paul, I think, was misled to believe that eliminating that loophole would somehow affect the fiber and grain industrial side, which is absolutely not true.
Well, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because some of the language in there would harm more than just the intoxicating stuff. If they were able to pinpoint it more precisely, and this is why, like, I know policy's boring and nobody likes to think about policy, but it really, really matters, and it really, really affects people's everyday lives. And poorly worded policy is what got us into this situation in the first place. It started with good intentions. Like, the whole reason we dropped the word industrial from the definition of hemp was an attempt to preserve the CBD industry, because the CBD industry was alive at the time. And then when that market, you know, it pretty much imploded on itself from oversaturation, innovative people figured out, oh, well, I can convert this stuff into D8. And, you know, so I don't like it, but there were a lot of people who didn't lose their farms because they figured out a market of where to sell their stuff. So I don't.
Intelligent potheads with investors saying, make us money, and labs full of equipment.
Yeah.
And they figured it out.
They figured it out. But again, like, is it their fault for taking advantage of the loophole, or is it the Congress's fault for providing them the loophole? Like, this is not rocket science. And if they would just regulate it the right way, or to your point, federally decriminalize or deschedule it so it's not illegal, then they would eliminate the black market, because then there would be legal pathways to do it. So I don't want to get on on too much of a tangent or a soapbox here, but like, this is why policy matters. Because even in terms of industrial hemp, this backlash from the intoxicating cannabinoids has prevented investment in the legitimate stuff. Like, we want industrial hemp to be as close to corn and soy and other traditional crops as possible, and this controversy is preventing that from happening. Now, we can disagree on what the fix for that is, whether it's, me personally, I don't think banning is ever the right solution. I think regulation is the right solution. But if we can't get there, let's do the least amount of harm possible.
But people have intentionally perpetuated confusion at the federal level to where when Erica goes to sit in someone's office, it takes 15 minutes of her 20-minute meeting to convince them that she's not talking about cannabinoids.
Yeah,
And
well,
that
we
is-
can't convince them because we were the ones that said hemp is not about getting high.
Right.
And now all of a sudden hemp is about getting high, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
they all said, I will never forget the day that like, we were told over and over again that hemp is a Trojan horse for, marijuana. And we're like, no, come on, like it's about fiber and grain and, like, okay, CBD. And this guy that started making D8 products under the hemp bill branded his crap Trojan horse. And I'm like,
Jesus.
you have got to be kidding me. Yeah, they made liars out of us.
So you don't think we're gonna have a farm bill?
What's that? What?
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
So we're not gonna have a farm bill.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna
In fact,
everything. Like we're never gonna get farm bill ever again.
But both administrations bear responsibility for
Yeah.
dysfunction in the last and
Yeah.
what's going on now.
Yeah.
There was a hand up. Okay, here we go.
There's a farm bill question?
Bring it.
It's a question about the definition of industrial. So, hypothetical question, but I can give some specificity to this. What if I invented an industrial application for cannabinoids?
Okay, so this is, the term industrial is actually unfortunate. Most people don't think of food as an industrial thing, right? Okay, but it is sort of historically the term that we're stuck with. And your end purpose is not going to be what determines what your regulatory path is going to be. If you're using cannabinoids, you will have to go down the cannabinoid regulatory path. And for now.
So, for an industrial purpose, for a large volume purpose application, we need to use broad acreage to produce that, in my opinion. I don't think we'll be able to produce the volume of cannabinoids for an industrial application using the horticultural practices that we have used for CBD.
If
So
you're going to
I
harvest
can-
flower, you're going to have to go down the cannabinoid
So I can
regulatory
harvest
path.
grain and capture the chaff off the back of my combine, my grain combine, and then use that to extract CBD or CBG.
Yes, they do that in Europe, but
I've seen that in Lithuania.
you will have to go down the cannabinoid regulatory. You gotta understand, like, the whole reason we're going through this is because of the perceived risk of cannabinoids, primarily THC in its various forms. So I can't, and there is no way to alleviate that, right? Like their fear of, oh my God, somebody somewhere might get high is like what is driving all of these policy decisions. So if there would be a way, so yeah, tri-cropping can be a thing. Like I think we're pretty far away from that in the United States right now. But yeah, we could get there. And maybe by the time we get there, saner heads will prevail and we'll, be able to say end products are what gets regulated. Because really at the end of the day, none of this should be on the backs of the farmer. They're not the ones creating the risk. But, and obviously in that scenario where you're going to harvest grain and save the chaff for cannabinoid extraction, that chaff is not going to really have much value on the black market as marijuana, right? So in that scenario, I would agree with you that it should fall under the industrial category, but the language that we were able to secure draws the line in terms of is your end purpose cannabinoids or not. And if you're going to, and you can still do it, it's just you'll have to get tested.
But isn't the problem here, like the logic that it's all based on? So the logic is, okay, so you're making you're asking a rational question, and policy's not going to follow that because there's an irrational belief that policy is guided on, which are cannabinoids in general are inherently dangerous. And so we have to craft policy that follows a belief structure that doesn't necessarily follow scientific fact.
Yes.
So that's the problem that we have to begin with, is we have to play this game because there's a boogeyman, and we have to set up a structure that reminds us that there's a boogeyman. Once we get rid of the boogeyman, if there were a time and place where we rationalize what is an intoxicant and what isn't, and what is define bad and good, then there can be a world where all of that starts to make sense. But we're currently definitely not there. We're a long way from.
We're nowhere.
I mean, just to give you an idea, I just got some tissue samples back on lambs, and we didn't find any cannabinoids that were transferred from the seed into the lamb, except for in the liver. And we found 7 out of 12 samples that had under 200 parts per billion of CBDA or THCA. And so that's nothing, and that's well below what we believe the threshold needs to be. But we're going to have to figure out an argument that the FDA will listen to that says that it's safe, because they don't believe it's safe. And what is the level in which that it's not necessarily safe, but it's not dangerous, and they haven't established those parameters. So that again goes back to the regulation and the policy is, if you don't have a safe or unsafe parameter, it's really hard to craft appropriate legislation and appropriate policy around that.
Yeah. I mean, I think terpenes is going to be another example of the problematic nature of the definition of industrial hemp, because terpenes have all manner of uses that have nothing to do with intoxicating or wellness or whatever, but because they're going to primarily come from CBD dominant plants as the best source for those terpenes, we're going to have the same thing. So, a lot of getting policy done and politics in general is the art of the possible, and it doesn't have to make sense. It mostly never makes sense. But if you don't start taking the wins that you can get, you're never going to get to the ultimate win, because I have never seen a piece of policy, maybe you in your life have seen a piece of policy that passes and does not have any unintended consequences. But the goal is to keep moving towards that perfect place. Where you want to go is the perfect place, and I think we would all agree we want to get there, but we're not going to get there in this farm bill.
Sarah?
I would just like to suggest that when I hear talk like this, I just get more and more and more beaten down.
Yep.
So I would like to encourage all of you to show somebody something tangible with hemp, like a cup with a really good beer in it. Maybe an IPA, locally produced. Or get some fabric from our textile weaver right here and make a shirt or a pair of jeans. Serve something that has hemp hearts or microgreens in it. And then, after everyone has said, wow, what is this? You can say, just a shirt that has hemp in it. Did you say hemp?
Yeah.
Why am I not seeing colors?
Yeah.
And you can say, I don't know, maybe because it's not the same thing, but it sure is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if the general public is our problem, though. It really is
You know
a
what?
small
Our
amount
general
of...
public has also this stigma. And we need, each one of us, I'm looking for something I can do.
Fair.
Okay?
Fair.
I need to do something to promote, I'm gonna keep my job, people. Call me selfish, but I want everyone to say, here, take a look at this, whatever it might be, that's good for you.
Yep.
And say, this is hemp. You don't need to be afraid of this.
I mean, there's part of that that's really true, because economics will drive the decision-making factors.
Yeah.
If the economics were different right now, we wouldn't have this problem. But who makes money in the grain and fiber industry right now? 0 people except for Larry. And Larry is because he's working in retail. I was shocked. We walked out of the field and I was like, he told me how he makes some money in hemp, and I was like, whoa, you make money in this industry. That is incredible. God bless Larry for that. But that's the problem, is if you're in an industry where there's not any cash, you're not going to be able to influence policymakers as easily if there's cash or evidence out there of this. And that, to me, again, not to shield on the Hemp Feed Coalition, but if we're buying eggs that have hemp in them, and that becomes normal, then it becomes normal to eat another animal, and another animal, and another animal. It becomes normal to wear the fabric, and you've got this normalization that occurs, and we're working, a lot of the politicians, this isn't normal for them, so they're making decisions based on a lack of normality that they have, and so we do have to change the norm. I think you are right. I think that's something that most people could do here, because they could call their congressman, but you probably won't, because you don't know what to say to them, and you don't know if it's going to have any effect, and so you don't feel like you can contribute, and I don't blame you for that, but you definitely can buy a cup, and you definitely can put a beer in it.
So let me just add some specificity. We've shown that CBD and CBG have insecticidal properties. New York State has banned neonicotinoid insecticides, so we are desperately looking for natural alternatives to neonicotinoid pesticides. So if I can produce the evidence that CBD or CBG can be sprayed on a golf course to kill the insect pests on a golf course as a replacement for what they use right now, which is a neonicotinoid, then that is an industrial use for
Yes.
cannabinoids.
I would,
And we need very large volumes of CBD and CBG.
yeah, and that's pretty awesome. I would encourage you to, you know, like your state legislators, like pretty, I mean, they've now reintroduced their animal feed bill. Pennsylvania was supposed to do that months ago. But,
Sorry, Mike.
anyway, sorry.
Mike.
You know, so they have demonstrated, now your Department of Ag, your governor vetoed it because your Department of Ag doesn't like it. But still, like, that would be a really good example where if you could get your state to adopt that and modify their definition of industrial hemp to match that, maybe they don't care that they need to have a USDA approved program. That would give you the opportunity to do that and show that proof of concept, and that would in turn like help decrease the stigma there, that these products are good for other things other than it is really just the intoxicating stuff that has ruined it for everybody. It's not CBD, it's not CBG, it's not anything else, but you know, THC for whatever is that boogeyman that you know Andrew was talking about, and it's proven impossible to get past that. And I think there's going to have to just be several senators and House people that need to retire or otherwise be gone before we'll ever get past that.
Anybody else? Yes, there we go. Great.
I'm going to ask a question to you.
Oh,
You made a statement earlier about when things get tough. I don't remember. the rest.
Yeah, right. I said that it's easier to get to change when there's disruption going on.
Right. And there's a lot of disruption going on in the world related to plastics and polymers and the environment and whatnot. And as a result of that, there's changes which, if we correlate those changes with what potentially hemp fiber can do, or hemp itself, there's a real opportunity. And it ends up being, I think, really more of a pull. I don't think, money talks. So you get into the realm of being able to accomplish something that I think is very sacred to the current administration, and that is technology. The idea that, let's say, we're falling behind in terms of technology. Within the state of what we are and where we are, through the kind of things you and Gabrielle have been doing and whatnot, there's an untapped resource that can be used effectively to catalyze things that go the other way. I don't think we can labor on what is and what was. I think we're pulsing to the kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I do think that the sustainability argument works with all parties too right now. I think that they get, you know, if you couch it right. Because I've always said that, you know, I tell this to my students, right? If you're working in a company and you walk up to the CEO and you say, we should do this sustainability initiative because it'll just make you feel good about yourself. You're gonna get nowhere, right? But if you could walk in and say, this sustainability issue is going to use less materials, less energy, and generate less waste, therefore we're going to save money,
Can't argue.
all of a sudden they're going to do it, right? So it's all in that point about how do you make the argument that this change is going to be beneficial, right?
You document it.
Yeah, you document it, right, exactly.
I think when it comes to how to gain traction in the market, which I've been thinking about for a long time, working with Erica on this, is I think you need to be able to express, I think maybe on the B2B side, that it's a high value additive within food. You can have the properties that you want in your food. You don't have to scream, there's hemp in my cornflakes, but now your cornflakes have omega-3 profile and protein they never had before. You don't have to scream, there's hemp in my house, but now it's fireproof and it breathes. You don't have to scream, there's hemp in my clothes, but now it's repels bacteria and your armpits don't smell. There's all kinds of actual high-value additives that this property and properties that it has across industries, across so many major verticals, that I think the B2B side is where you can maybe drive value and forget what the customer thinks down the road. I mean, because you're talking about things that the companies want their products to have, and to Paul's point too, that the tensile strength and the things that hemp adds, it's not just cool there's hemp in your cup, it's making it a better cup. And that's things that people understand on the engineering side, that it beats the benchmark of polluting materials that are already in it. You don't even need to use the oil. It's actually better to use this naturally grown product.
Yeah,
So-
none of the car parts that have hemp in them are
Correct.
advertising
Since the
that
80s,
there's hemp.
Mercedes had hemp in it.
Yeah,
You didn't
right.
know?
Yeah.
And I don't try to smoke my car.
BMW has
Yeah,
it too.
I think that's the
I
point.
mean, I kind of do. That's not
Yeah, they don't, you're right, they don't advertise that, they advertise the property.
That's an
That's a
education
very
thing,
good
though,
point,
like
yeah.
taking it to a more esoteric level, and this is like when I prompted Ashley on the cost of the cup. I already knew what the answer was, which is that, you know, like Paul said, it doesn't actually matter what the cup costs. And we have been tricked as a society into believing that, you know, a low cost item is of a higher value, but really we've punted the cost is all that we've done, right? Whether it's impact on your community, vacuuming, you know, profit out of a community by buying, you know, goods made at a low cost in China, or, you know, punting the plastic problem, right? Like, yeah, we have plastics that work, but, you know, they're all in our ocean now, and we export our pollution to other countries that then
Or
take
you
it
buy
and
a
dump it in the
shirt
ocean.
that you have to buy in India,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's 6,000 pounds of textiles every second going
Yeah.
into landfill.
The low cost has a hidden price, and that's what we deal with the housing part. And by and large, most of our clients, we've done, I think, about like 50 houses now around the country. Eric is one of them in East Stroudsburg here. Unfortunately, only 3 of those are in Pennsylvania, which is another problem I have to deal with. But you know, the people that are building these houses are attracted to the material because it is high performance, right? It's going to lower their energy bills, and it's a healthy material. You know, and I think in the case of housing in particular, just to put my previous comment into context with housing, you know, what do we judge the value of a home on? Does it have hardwood floors? Does it have nice appliances? Is there marble countertops? You know, but nobody gives a shit that the wall is made out of, you know, pink fiberglass insulation and drywall, which by the way is a coal byproduct, coal slag. So nobody really cares about that, and your
VOC level in the house, yeah.
and your Habitat for Humanity home versus your McMansion neighborhood in, you know, Mahwah, New Jersey, they're built the same way. It's just what lipstick was put on that pig, you know, and so that's where most of our clients have realized, and I think this is something that will happen with building materials. Like, you know, we spend 90% of our time indoors, right? So the materials surrounding you in your home, just like the clothing that you wear, right, Dave? That has a huge impact on your health, and we don't properly assign a value to that.
Yeah.
We did with organic food. I like to draw the comparison to organic food, right? Years ago, organic food was expensive. It was hard to find. You had to join a CSA, or you had to go to Trader Joe's and pay through the nose for it, right? Now Aldi has a banging selection of organic produce, right? It's affordable, it's more commonplace. You have this entire facility dedicated to growing, you know, healthy organic food, right? So the same thing needs to happen for housing, needs to happen for textiles, needs to happen for plastics, everything around us. You know, we've cheapened everything to such an extent to where, yes, it doesn't cost us as much money right now, but your children pay that cost. Your community pays that
The difference
cost.
there is that changing, and this is the problem with consumerism when it happened post World War II, is getting the mindset to change from cost to value. right? And if that's what everybody's been saying indirectly, right, is you can't think about the cost, you have to think about the value.
I have a question for Mr. Roth. This isn't your first time on these type of panels, hearing all of these experts in the industrial hemp space in Pennsylvania. What do you see is the holdup in Department of Agriculture in allowing us to move forward with a lot of these initiatives that we've been proposing for 5 years? What do you see is the holdup? And then is there a way that you would suggest we approach that holdup as a group of experts as we are?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think, so this was the first year we actually had some sort of teeth to invest. Usually it was sister departments that, someone would say, hey, I have a great hemp project, it's going to be manufacturing everything. We would say, good luck working with our sister department, just to be very frank, because it would be, we don't do marijuana projects, we don't do, drugs, we don't do all this. So this was the first year with Ag Innovation. Wasn't perfect, but we were able to get something across the finish line with that, and I hope we can continue to build on that. The governor has proposed $25 million for this year. We had 10 last year, so I hope we can do more. But I think the number one thing is the infrastructure investment, co-investment, that it's a public-private partnership. It's not just a random entity we have no interaction with, so therefore maybe the farmers don't have an interaction with. There's no trust built between that. So I think that's number one, is getting that hard infrastructure on the ground, and hopefully we can be a part of that as we move forward. That just wasn't something we were able to support. We could support hemp field days, we could do a little bit of promotion, but to move the needle, we need industry here that we can point to. Because like the hemp house, for me, the legislators that we brought to the hemp house were people that were never going to listen to me. I mean, just to be very frank, they don't care if I'm saying, oh, hemp's really cool, really great. But having them walk into a house and say, oh, this is a real thing, it's completely different. So being able to point to industry and say, this is something actually happening in your district, I think is huge. So not a perfect answer. And I want to say too, the other thing, our funding is limited, and I like what Secretary Redding often says, we'll be your second best advocate. So we can't be your first for a number of reasons, but we'll be your second best advocate. So if we can sort of envelope around you in your efforts, we want to try and do that. So I'd say that the infrastructure investment is first and foremost. Legislation, that's where things get challenging because you have the federal layer over top of things, so we can't do anything different than that. And then within that, we can't do what our legislature says we can or cannot do. That being said, I think the department has been fairly flexible as far as what we've been able to invest and support, but open to ideas and open to new industry things like that. Last thing I'll wrap up with, I think where there might be some value, and I hope folks in the room see the value in this. My role, I'm not a farmer. I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh. I did some urban ag stuff, but I'm not a farmer. But the value I hope that I can bring and the department can bring is to be that connector. We've been able to do this in some ways, and I hope to do it for the hemp industry as well, where ag tech is the big topic right now. And what we historically have seen is that it's John Deere working with Iowa farmers to make this much more efficient corn harvesting. But as Cameron mentioned, that's not Pennsylvania. Yeah, we have corn, but that's not going to move the needle in Pennsylvania. So what we have been doing is connecting the AI and robotics network that is truly world leading. It's not blowing air out there, truly world leading in the Pittsburgh ecosystem with Carnegie Mellon and National Robotics Engineering Center and others, with agriculture professionals that they have never had exposure to. Say there are markets here and there are connections that can be made. Similarly, talk to a plastics company that does protrusion, so it's slightly different than injection molding. They're looking for hemp fiber, so trying to find folks that do have hemp fiber here in Pennsylvania that they can source from. So being that sort of connector, I think is probably the most valuable thing right now that we can be doing. So if I can be that vessel for you all, I want to do that. But there's still a lot of challenges. So I know that doesn't answer your question completely, but that's sort of, in my position, what I can do at this point.
And that's kind of what we're hoping to try to do with the planning grant, and still want you to continue to be a part of that, is to come up with the actual financial plan for the supply chain so we can take it to the Department of Ag and to private investors so we can have a better chance. Like, I just feel like the more of us that work together on a plan, to that term of like building the trust and being known entities to the department and to outside investors, that if we collaborate more, we have a better chance of success. So we're really hoping that we're able to pull, all of the expertise that we have here in this room together to create that plan that will be enticing enough to get government and private private investment to make it real.
I was going to add one thing to that. I think that Mike is absolutely right that a physical facility somewhere that you can show people, and I'm always accused of being an eternal optimist, but I think that if you get that first facility built, and you can show legislators that thing, but I think that's going to be the tipping point.
That's the thing, we
Yeah.
already had it and showed it in Pennsylvania. And there was something that got lost in translation.
Yeah. And
Well, you might have been a little bit ahead of your time in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, and then COVID was there. Like, there were a lot
Yeah.
of external factors to that. Like, that's not your fault. That's not the
I
department's
understand,
fault.
I'm just saying, that it's there.
Yeah.
We have seen it. So,
You brought,
even it's
yeah.
not here anymore, the fact is we have seen it.
Yeah.
The state Reagan, Secretary Reagan has seen it. He's
Mhm.
been in the facility.
So, so you brought, what you said in response to that is exactly the second point, and that is that, again, one of the mantras I give the students all the time is you can have the best idea in the world. If it's not communicated in the right way to a decision maker so they do something about it, it doesn't matter. So you didn't do anything wrong. But I'm saying that we, as a community, didn't communicate the impact of that facility appropriately, right? It's all of our collective faults, quite honestly, because if a facility exists and we communicate it properly to the folks that need to make decisions about it, then we will be successful. So we have one of the two elements, we didn't have the second one. I think
And now
that-
we can. Let's do it.
So now we got the second part, and we gotta get the first part.
Okay,
Okay?
right.
Let's do it.
I just found 20 bucks under my chair.
From an outsider perspective, and I'm not one to congratulate the government very often, but your Department of Agriculture is the most proactive Department of Agriculture relative to hemp that I've seen in any state in the union. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Nebraska, if it's not corn and soybeans, they're not doing it. They know we got a problem. They don't care about solving it. The people that I've talked to at the Department of Agriculture, and I haven't met you, but have always been really, really helpful. And it's almost shocking how easy your department is to talk to about this subject.
Let me just emphasize, we are not perfect. We have plenty to work on. So, but I really do appreciate that, and that's our effort, is to be a good door to enter into. And again, I offer myself that I'm in a completely new position. Like I said, I came in as a lowly fellow who said, I can't wait to work on climate change and do hemp buildings and all this stuff. And I said, and I was told, you're never going to do any of that. Got to do some of it, again.
We're not done with you yet.
Yeah. But I'm a year into this ag innovation, and I've been very fortunate that I was given a long leash to define what is ag innovation. I think, the initial thought was, it's all tech, it has to be the sexy software stuff. And I said, that's part of it, but we also are going to do energy, and we're also going to do fiber. Generally speaking, hardwoods is the top ag industry in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So if we say it's only, the sexy software for corn and soy, you're missing the whole purpose. So again, if I can be liaison to new ventures, new things, but again, I just want to emphasize that partnership piece. There's only so much I can do to advocate, but if it's you, me, other private partners, nonprofits, others, then I hope we have a voice that it's hard to not listen to.
This is the hardest part of being the moderator is I want to keep us on time. I promised that we would be finishing up around 4. And so I'm going to give you a chance to talk to the panelists informally when we break up here. But I promised them that I would give them 30 seconds each to give one piece of advice as a closing statement before we stop the formal part of the panel and we break up. And those who have to leave can leave. Those who want to stay and talk to people can do that. Okay? So I'm going to unfortunately start with you, Andrew.
A piece of advice.
Yeah.
Who's a farmer in the room? Okay, so we got a couple people. That means most of you aren't farmers. Find off-take opportunities. Offtake opportunities are the key. No matter what you do, whether you're a farmer, you want to be a processor, you want to do anything, find an offtake opportunity. That's going to get the industry moving.
Good.
I heard Mike say that the legislators went through the hemp house and went, whoa, this is different, this is neat. Experience matters. Experience makes an impression, and you don't have to say anything. So do what you can. Do what you can to expose people to this particular crop and make it normal. Just make it normal. Everybody loves you, your family loves you, you know that. So go home, buy some hemp hearts, okay? Get some microgreens, wear a fabric shirt, and look for your local hemp house. And if anybody's building, contact Cameron, because he can insulate it for you. And they'll save money on the back end.
You're here.
Yeah, I would just say, and I'm saying this to people who already have been very brave in this industry. Ashley, thank you again for having us here, being brave at the start of this whole venture. But I would say bravery and pragmatism. Continue to be bold, continue to pursue all the different opportunities we have with hemp, but let's also be pragmatist of we're in a really strange, unique time right now. So we're going to have to find those very pragmatic entry points to work together to get through that. So again, just bravery and pragmatism.
Good.
That one's going to be hard to beat. I think my piece of advice would be, as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, who gets burned out pretty frequently, whenever I start to feel discouraged, I remind myself that hemp's only been federally legal since 2018, really in all practical purposes 2019, and in the grand scope of every other crop out there, it's nothing. Like, it is a blink of the eye. Like, no industry builds itself from nothing in that short amount of time, and when you look at it in that light, setbacks and all, we're going to get there. And we're going to get there sooner rather than later. And one day we'll all look back and say, like, yeah, it was tough, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I'll politically take the opportunity to thank you, Ron. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Jefferson, Rodale, everybody at Rodale, and Ashley, of course. I take any opportunity I can to come here. It's been a long time since I've been here. Had a lot of fun here. Zoom out when you think about fiber industrial hemp, especially for all these applications that we were talking about. What makes it special? It is a rapidly, annually, and agriculturally renewable feedstock from which you can make many things, right? Can clothe you, house you, feed you. That's Judy Wicks said that, one of our mentors to many of us in this room. That's what makes it really cool. There are other crops like it. Without ending on a pessimistic note, my machine, Larry, that machine in the back of your truck doesn't actually care that you're putting hemp in it. It could be any appropriately sized vegetal aggregate derived from a rapidly, annually, and agriculturally renewable feedstock. There are many others like it. Flax. Sarah just hooked me up with someone that has flax shives. So just remember that that's what makes hemp special in terms of all of these products that you heard about and got to see today, is that it's bio-based. And that's what the future needs to be, right? We can all agree on that. Bio-based is the way forward. We've got to grow what we need.
Yep.
Ron, I just have one more thing.
I'm sure.
We're bookended by two guys who have carried the water for the hemp building industry and for the Hemp Feed Coalition. So each of us can do our part, because these guys really have pushed that across the line. And it has taken a relentless pursuit, a belief in the product, and a real sincere effort at their own cost.
And good friends.
And good friends,
Yep.
and many good, and I neglected to say, you have always been really good about sharing the small limelight that you kind of have. But thank you very much. And everybody, do your part.
Yeah. So as moderator, I'll close it with my one piece of advice, which would be it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yep.
Which is the advice I always give my students too, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't worry about today or tomorrow, worry about, as you sort of said, look at that timeline. And we have a long way to go, but just pace yourself and we'll get there. So Ashley, it's your facility. Do you want the last word?
I think we need what Bish's coordinators right here. All the pieces for everybody.